Welcome to Historical Repo, your home for exploring the forgotten corners of history. The year is 1212. Across the fields of France and Germany, a strange and powerful fervor is taking hold. This wasn't a call to arms for knights or soldiers, but for the most innocent and unlikely of warriors, children. They gathered in the thousands, a river of young faces filled with a belief so pure it was heartbreaking. They were convinced that their innocence alone would succeed where the powerful armies of kings and emperors had failed. This is the bizarre and tragic story of the Children's Crusade, a moment in history where youthful faith collided with the brutal realities of the world. It's a tale that serves as a haunting reminder of the power of belief and the depths of human despair. Imagine the world of the early 13th century. For generations, Europe had been caught in the grip of the Crusades, a series of immense military campaigns to reclaim the Holy Land from Muslim rule. By 1212, the initial fervor had waned, replaced by a sense of disillusionment. The First Crusade had seen a surprising victory, but subsequent expeditions were marked by political infighting, strategic blunders, and immense loss of life. The powerful Fourth Crusade, just a few years earlier, had devolved into a shocking fiasco, culminating not in the liberation of Jerusalem, but in the sack of the Christian city of Constantinople. For the common person, especially the peasantry, this string of failures was deeply troubling. They believed the Holy Land was their sacred inheritance, and the inability of the rich and powerful to reclaim it felt like a spiritual crisis. A sense of collective frustration and helplessness permeated the social fabric. This atmosphere created fertile ground for a new, radical idea to take root. The thinking went that perhaps the expeditions failed because they were led by men who were sinful, greedy, and proud. The knights and nobles were seen as tainted by worldly ambitions. If these powerful men couldn't succeed, maybe it was because God required a different kind of army. An army not of hardened soldiers, but of the pure in heart. And who could be more pure, more innocent, than a child? This sentiment began to bubble up from the very bottom of society, from the fields and villages where life was hard and faith was everything. It was a grassroots movement, born not from a papal decree or a king's command, but from the fervent whispers of the poor. It's in this charged environment that our first protagonist appears, a young shepherd boy from the French countryside named Stephen of Cloyes. According to the chronicles, Stephen claimed to have received a letter from Jesus Christ himself, intended for the French king. He began to preach in public, his voice filled with a passion that captivated those who heard him. He spoke of a divine mission, a calling for the children of France to march to the Holy Land. He was charismatic and his message was simple and powerful. Stephen proclaimed that their purity was their greatest weapon. He told the growing crowds that when they reached the Mediterranean Sea, God would perform a miracle. The waters would part for them, just as the Red Sea had parted for Moses, allowing them to walk on dry land all the way to Jerusalem. This promise of a divine miracle was electrifying. It offered a sense of hope and purpose to a population that had very little of either. Soon, Stephen was no longer just a shepherd boy, he was seen as a prophet, a leader chosen by God. Thousands of children, and even some adults, were drawn to his cause. They left their homes, their families, and the only lives they had ever known to follow him. Contemporary accounts suggest a number of up to 30,000 people joined this incredible procession. They marched south through France, a vast, unorganized column of pilgrims. Their journey was fueled by faith and the songs they sang, but they were woefully unprepared for the hardships of the road. They had little food, and no real plan beyond Stephen's divine promise. As they traveled, their numbers began to dwindle. The summer heat, the lack of provisions, and the sheer exhaustion of the march took their toll. Many turned back, disillusioned and hungry, while others tragically perished along the way. Finally, the remaining followers, weary but still hopeful, arrived at the port city of Marseille. They gathered at the water's edge, their eyes fixed on the horizon, waiting for the promised miracle. They prayed and waited. And waited. But the sea did not part. The waves continued to lap against the shore, indifferent to their desperate faith. The crushing disappointment must have been unimaginable. The divine sign they had staked everything on had failed to materialize. At this moment of profound despair, two local merchants appeared, offering a solution. Their names were recorded as Hugh the Iron and William the Pig. They offered to provide ships to transport the children across the sea to the Holy Land, free of charge. To the exhausted and crestfallen children, this must have seemed like a different kind of miracle, an act of charity in their darkest hour. Gratefully, they accepted the offer and boarded the 7 ships provided. Their dream, it seemed, was alive once more. The reality, however, was a horrifying betrayal. The two merchants were not philanthropists, they were slavers. Their plan was never to take the children to the Holy Land. Instead, they sailed the fleet to the coasts of North Africa. 2 of the ships were wrecked in a storm off the coast of Sardinia, and all aboard were lost. The remaining 5 ships landed in ports like Bougie and Alexandria, where the merchants' cruel deception was revealed. The children, who had marched with such pure intentions, were sold into slavery. Their long, arduous journey, which began with such heavenly promise, ended in the most earthly of tragedies. They had set out to liberate a holy city through innocence, only to be enslaved by greed. Meanwhile, a similar movement was unfolding hundreds of miles away in the Rhineland region of Germany. Here, the leader was another boy, named Nicholas of Cologne. Like Stephen, he was a powerful preacher who attracted a massive following. Nicholas's message was slightly different. He also preached that the sea would part for them, but he believed they needed to march south to Italy to cross. He also emphasized that their goal was not to fight, but to peacefully convert the inhabitants of the Holy Land to Christianity. An enormous crowd, estimated to be between 20,000 and 50,000 strong, began the treacherous journey south. They had to cross the formidable barrier of the Alps, a daunting task even for seasoned travelers, let alone a disorganized crowd of children. The trek over the mountains was devastating. Hunger, freezing temperatures, and exhaustion claimed the lives of thousands. The magnificent alpine scenery became a backdrop for immense suffering. By the time they descended into Italy, their numbers had been cut by more than half. The weary survivors arrived in the city of Genoa in late August. Just as in Marseille, they marched to the coast and waited for the sea to part. And just as in Marseille, the miracle did not happen. The Mediterranean remained stubbornly in its place. At this point, the movement fractured. Some of the children, seeing their hopes dashed, decided to stay in Genoa, where the city authorities offered them a chance to settle and become citizens. A new life was better than a failed pilgrimage. Nicholas, however, refused to give up. He insisted the journey was not over and led the remaining loyal followers onward to the city of Pisa. There, they found 2 ships bound for the Holy Land and a small group managed to sail, though what became of them is lost to history. Still undeterred, Nicholas himself led the rest of the dwindling band even further south, all the way to Rome itself. There, he and his followers gained an audience with Pope Innocent III, one of the most powerful and influential popes of the Middle Ages. The Pope was moved by their piety and youth, but he was also a pragmatist. He understood the impossibility of their quest. Gently, he commended their zeal but absolved them of their crusading vows, instructing them to return home. The journey back was just as perilous as the journey out. Only a tiny fraction of the thousands who had set out from Germany with Nicholas ever saw their homes again. Nicholas himself was never heard from again. Some chronicles say his own father was later arrested and executed by angry families who had lost their children. The Children's Crusade stands as one of history's most poignant and disturbing episodes. It's a story with few reliable sources, wrapped in layers of legend, making it difficult for historians to separate fact from embellishment. Some modern scholars even question whether they were all children in the modern sense, suggesting the Latin word used, pueri, could also mean the poor or the landless. But whether they were all young children or a broader mix of the dispossessed, the core of the story remains a powerful account of mass hysteria. It demonstrates how a combination of religious fervor, social desperation, and charismatic leadership can create a movement that defies all logic. The children believed so completely in the power of their own innocence that they embarked on a journey that was, by any rational measure, suicidal. They were failed by the world of adults, from the indifferent forces of nature to the predatory cruelty of the slave merchants. It's a sad and cautionary tale about the dangers of blind faith when it is untethered from reason and reality. Their tragic fate underscores a grim lesson, that purity of heart, no matter how profound, is often no match for the harsh complexities of the world. Thank you for joining us on Historical Repo. If you find these journeys into the past as fascinating as we do, please consider subscribing to the channel to support our explorations. We look forward to seeing you again.